Everyone, welcome back. We are going live, and let me just make sure I've got the lighting nicely set so that you can enjoy your. I think that's pretty good. This should be pretty good. We're getting lights now, and today's again we're going to be continuing our little visit through some of the comic books. But the focus today will be on the graphic novels. So what I'm gonna do is these are not all of mine. I have a lot more than this, but I will go through some of these ones, and it'll give me an opportunity to talk to you about some of the stories and the art and what's worth it, what's not, and that way at least you'd be able to you could always go excuse me, go to YouTube videos on YouTube and just figure out what works best for you. There are lots of videos out there that will summarize it for you. My summary is a little different. I'm actually talking to you about really whether it's worth it for you or not, in my opinion, because graphic novels, they do cost a little bit of money. All right, now this alone is in US dollars. It's like $25. All right, uh, $34 in Canadian currency, and this is actually a hardcover. Okay, so they look very good on the shelf, but the question is then, are they worth it? Is it good enough, so to say? Because when you're spending so much money on these books, and to be honest, they're not going to get cheaper anytime soon. They're just going to keep getting more and more expensive. So then the question is it worth it? So we're just going to go through these books, and we're just going to I'm going to give you a glimpse of what the art looks like, a summary of what the story is like. I do remember some of the stories. It's not like I've forgotten them completely. So let's just go ahead and begin. The first one that I want to talk to you about is the Injustice versus Masters of the Universe. Now, for those who know, I'm actually quite a fan of Masters of the Universe. Hey again. And what happens in this one is that this time it is DC meets the Masters of the Universe, but the only thing is that this is actually the Injustice, right? The Evil Justice League. So this artist, by the way, what is he? Is he Freddie Williams? I think it's Freddie Williams. He has done more than one He-Man comic book, and he likes to make his characters super bulky, especially He-Man. Okay, which is okay, and he uses a lot of penciling. Let me show you some what of his art. It's super detailed. Okay, um, bulky, voluptuous. That's what his art looks like. Even the coloring is very interesting. In this storyline, basically what happens is that the Injustice group collide with Masters of the Universe, and of course your core villains are involved in it, from the Masters of the universe, and of course DC. Primarily it is the Injustice. Okay, the book is pretty good. The storyline is kind of nice. It is a little bit on the darker side. You can tell just by the illustrations itself. Looking like, even she looks like ferocious over there. And you've got Darkseid that appears as well. But the story is kind of nice. I'm not going to reveal to you the core elements of it. What I can say, it's mostly entertaining. And for a book that costs you $25, now understand, 25, you can do a lot in 25, right? You can buy 2-3 subscriptions that will last you a month for $25. And this one is the hardcover version, right? Which is kind of nice because it looks good as a display unit. All right, here you go. This is how hard it is. Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. just we're just all normal guys trying to create some videos that might be useful for people. But this is something that I would recommend. It is an interesting read, and for $25, it is going to sit on your desk or your closet for some time, but you will not be a waste of your time. So certainly go for that one. All right, let's continue to move on. We are now He-Man and the Eternity War. This is a sort of a grander sort of a storyline. Not Superman. Sorry, He-Man, where the stakes are a lot larger. And this does include the villainous Skeletor and Hordak. I am not from the UK, but I was born in the UK. And where we see a lot of the popular faces literally dying in this storyline, so it's almost like, wow, what is exactly happening? But the stakes are a lot larger, and Eternia is falling. Eventually it does fall, and then it's all about who can save, and He-Man is sort of out of the picture. Prince Adam is in super doubt. He just doesn't know what he's doing is correct or not, but it turns out that he himself is actually possessed by the snake, the leader of the snake men. I'm forgetting his name. But then he finally clears himself. So it's pretty intensive storyline. The art is okay. Wasn't the best art, I think. Hey, thank you a lot. I appreciate it. Your commentary is always good to hear because it just motivates me to keep making more and more videos. But this story, I'm just sort of iffy with it. If you like to collect He-Man Masters of the Universe, you can go for it. Otherwise, yeah, maybe I'll tilt more towards actually buying it because it is kind of interesting. So this is something of a good read. The Eternity War. It comes in multiple volumes. I don't know if they have the full book covered in one, but it is a pretty good read. So I've got the Infinite Crisis over here. I will cover this later. Now let's talk about the Justice League Last Ride. Now I'll just let you know, Justice League is I'm okay with the Justice League, okay, and I was kind of unsure about this one, Last Ride, but I will tell you this was a very entertaining read. The Justice League Last Ride. Basically what's happened is that things have happened and all the Trinity is no longer as close as they used to be. Superman really doesn't like Batman for something that he did, or at least something he allowed to happen. And so the Justice League are no longer that team. But of course, there's an intergalactic danger and they need to come together again. And so they need to put aside their differences. And so what then happens is they face that ultimate evil. And ultimately, yes, the good survives and they win. And but this is actually a very nice story. I really like the way the team sort of comes together. That was a really nice part about the storyline. So this is actually a book that I will recommend if you would like to invest in. Let me just see what the prices are. So it looks like it's about $17. It's pretty good for $17, so I would recommend. And look at that, it's got a very nice back cover there as well. Can a disbanded Justice League forgive murder to bring a murderer to justice? It's a good read. Go ahead and seek out this book. You will have a good time with it. All right, let's keep moving forward. You will notice that there's lots of DC in there, and that's because, as you know, you may have heard in some of my other videos, primarily I'm a DC person. I just don't buy any of their mainstream characters today. But these are some of the storyline that came out a couple of years ago. These are actually very interesting storyline. Of course, it's all Batman related, and it does talk about the dark multiverse. Okay, so I know multiverse is a big thing in Marvel movies and so on and so forth. This one's got art by Greg Capullo. Very good art. This is a very interesting story. It does kind of center around Batman as if he is the core or the key to everything that happens in DC, which sometimes I'm like, does it have to be? But whether we accept it or not, he is in fact the most popular character that DC has right now, even more than Superman, even more than Wonder Woman. Hence, this book revolves around him. But this is a good storyline. I would certainly recommend it. Let's see what the price is on this one. This one is, what is the price? $20. $20 for this book. This is actually a good read. Dark Knight's Metal. So this is really cool. And then of course you've got Batman holding two axes. Why not? And Scott Snyder is generally a good writer for DC, and he's been writing good books. Which then takes me to a very popular storyline, Batman the Court of Owls saga. This is again Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Apparently these two were like the dynamic duo of DC maybe so Batman more so. This is a very interesting take on Batman. The whole idea being that there is a secret, almost like a cult, that's been watching over Gotham City for many decades, if not century, and it's almost as if like they organize everything that happens in the city. And Batman or the Wayne Foundation, including Batman's parents, they were all just in some way either involved with the Court of Owls or just didn't realize that they were being influenced by the Court of Owls. This is the full storyline. Batman protects the city, but the city actually watches over Batman in a negative sense. It's like they're keeping an eye, tabs on what he's doing, where he's going. Do they know his secret identity? I think so. I'm kind of forgetting because I've not read the book in a bit of time now. But very good. And then they sent their fighter, who's this, I don't know if I don't want to call him the Owl Man, but he basically goes out and delivers their justice to people out in Gotham. Okay, so this is actually the full saga. Hence, there are more pages in this book. This one is about $25. You might actually get a better price on this book in the stores because it's a little old now, but certainly worth the read. Let's move on to Superman, Wonder Woman. Now, this was actually the power couple, as they sort of put it together, and I thought this was a great idea. The concept was really good, because the pairing of Wonder Woman and Superman, I think that is something that DC fans have been wanting to see for the longest time. And you may have seen some of that during the 80s and 90s, one-offs or annuals where Superman and Wonder Woman actually have a relationship. But in the new 52, which actually didn't last very long, they actually sort of made that relationship. Of course, it's not all lovey-dovey, kissy-kissy stuff. There's lots of action that comes into it. But the art was pretty good for what it was. And I thought as a start, it went pretty well. Some very interesting villains and concept. Nothing in specific. Look, the stories, it's DC. It was a regular monthly book that was coming out, so you had multiple stories of things happening, but in most cases they were together. So I actually did enjoy the chemistry between the two. It was fun, but and I guess that was the problem with the new 52, was that it didn't last long, for good reason, because when you as you continue to go through volume 2 and volume 3, I think that interest was not that ground. Nitin, I don't know. I actually don't read mainstream Marvel, but I do know that there are lots of elements in Marvel and DC that I at least do not enjoy, and maybe that's what you're referring to. But I actually do not buy any of the mainstream. But I want to say I agree with you, and I wouldn't be surprised if their stuff is kind of crappy. But then a lot of the mainstream stuff is crappy, which is why, by the way, it is okay. So I'm going to take your word for it that it is bad. But what I've done at least now, and maybe this will help you, or maybe if you've got an advice, I've actually moved towards some of the side characters. So none of, even in the DC, no, I don't buy any of the main stuff. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Catwoman, gone. Now I'm buying some of the sideline stuff. So World's Finest, for example, will give you all these characters, but in small stories in a book. So I think that's kind of nice. And then of course He-Man or the Silverhawks. I have to buy actually the Silverhawks, Thundercats, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the Saturday Show. Those are the comics that I'm buying nowadays. But anyways, back to this. In Superman, Wonder Woman, I would suggest volume 1 and volume 2 are good. Go for those. You'll be spending about $17-18 per book. That is not terrible, honestly, but you gotta decide what to do. The boys type stuff, yep, that is true, but you must understand that, tastes, and everyone is looking for that next big thing, including us, the consumers. Sometimes we get tired of seeing the same stuff again and again, so that's why some of these alternative books or characters do come up. Nobody wants to be a hero anymore. Yeah, I would not disagree. Okay, Superman, Wonder Woman, Volume 3. So I actually really like this artist, Doug Mankey. Is that how you pronounce his name? I think he does great art, great work. So that's why I was certainly supportive of this book. I got to enjoy his stories, his art. The dynamic between Wonder Woman and Superman was still very enjoyable. So this is also a good storyline. So I would say yes, go for it. Look at his art; it's really good. This guy Doug, he does good art. So at least for that, you're getting good value for your money. So this is actually a good buy. And I think at this stage, from here on, which was book 4, I think from here on, I was not particularly pleased with where the storylines were going. And I think this is at this point where I decided, I'm like, I don't know if I want to continue to buy Superman and Wonder Woman anymore. And to be honest, at this time, they were about to end that series anyway, right? So this was where it was all coming down, and then they were bringing back the original heroes, right? So Stanley, of course, Nitin, who does not like Stanley? Whether you're DC, Marvel, or any other alternative, who does not like Stanley? He's created some great things. In fact, you know what? I would suggest that if you have the time, or if you've not seen it, go to like the Greats. I think this was a documentary that they, not a documentary, like a little interview show they made with Stanley. He was hosting it, and you had people like Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, and Todd McFarlane basically taking viewers through the process of creating comic characters. That's a very nice show. I think the Greats, or some Greats of Marvel, or something like that's what it's called. My collection is huge. I've got books, thousands of them. They don't even fit in my closet, so I actually have separate storage for them, and they come in those plastic boxes, which I showed in my previous video. So that's not. Anyways, so I'm just gonna wrap it up on this series at least. So you've got Superman, Wonder Woman books, volumes 1, 2, 3, 4. That was it. By 5, I don't even think I got 5, or if I did, I don't even remember. So let's continue to move. This is an interesting storyline where the button, it's all related to the Watchmen, and this is where the worlds of DC heroes and the Watchmen basically started to merge, right? So you had elements of the Watchmen in there, and of course you had some very interest. The art is pretty good, but I think this is Jason Fabok. Yes, Jason Fabok. Very nice artist. Very good. Here's the thing. This book costs about $15, and if you're going to be spending $15 on a book, for those who are here in the US, that you can buy streaming services which are costing you $7, $8 per month, right? So if you're going to be spending $15, $20, is it worth it? You might as well pay for the streaming service that you're buying, right? So anyways, this is an interesting story in which Batman is investigating the button. Now, if you remember from the Watchmen, the button belonged to the comedian who was killed, right, mysteriously, until it was resolved. So he got hold of this button, and he's trying to figure out, wait, why is this here? What does it mean? What does it represent? And slowly and steadily. So this story really revolves around Batman and the Flash, and the Flash, I think he's also traveling between multiverses at this time. So there you can see he's traveled to the multiverse in which Thomas Wayne is Batman, and Bruce and his wife got killed, right? So this is an interesting story where Thomas Wayne and Bruce Wayne actually interact, and then how that story would play. Okay, so this is that storyline. So it's interesting. Excuse me. This artist, I want to say, he makes his characters rather macho, right? So they have these confident poses. They when they're talking, when they're saying a dialogue, it's very hovering. It's like really, no, I wouldn't say sulking, but it's kind of intense. This is my hobby. It's not my profession, Natine. I just buy them because I enjoy them. I've been enjoying them for the last many decades. So I just thought I'd just share some of that information on YouTube. I know it's already there. Many people do that. And so, well, I just thought I'd share it because everyone has their own selections. But anyways, back to this. This is actually a good storyline. I was not able to buy the full series. I thought I'd just try this one out, but it's good. This is a good read. It's mostly dark, but the button is actually a good read. Okay, let's continue to stay on the New 52. We've got Batgirl. So Batgirl, as you know, for the longest time she was disabled because she got shot on the abdomen, but in this case she is able to come back. Christopher, the Dark Knight series, yes, of course, it's almost peak Batman. Although I must admit, I do enjoy Tim Burton's '89 Batman as well. If you've not seen those movies, please do watch them. Or if you have seen them and you haven't seen them in the longest time, go watch them. They're really entertaining. But the Dark Knight series is definitely some of the most engaging and enjoyable, especially with some of the scenes and the soundtrack. Really good. Okay, so Batgirl is back to being Batgirl. She is a vigilante again, and then of course she has to deal with the fact that her father, Commissioner Gordon, is also investigating criminals and vigilantes. So keeping that secret identity is a little bit of a stressful activity. The one with the penguin villain is actually a darker one, so that is a little bit, you kind of have to be like at that time, if you were a child, you sort of need to mature into that book, but it is still, sorry, not book, movie, but it's still very good. But I think the first one, Batman '89, that is probably one of the best Batman movies out there. They really captured the tone really, really well. And it's not about feeling, oh, look, these movies are going to last for the rest of their lifetime, right? Every generation is going to be watching these movies, so why not, right? All right, let's keep moving. All right, this was actually very interesting. Here we go. Look at that. Just take that in for a second. He-Man, Thundercats. Now, for those who watched the cartoons or the shows way back then, I think it was almost like a dream team to say, hey, will He-Man and Thundercats ever come together? And lo and behold, they do in this book. Two of pop culture's greatest universes collide. Now, this book is... what is the price on this book? It's about $17. It's about $17, so it's pretty good. This is the same art as the one on He-Man, so let me just pull that book back again for a second. Here we go. And this is the same artist, and I think it's the same team. So is it Tim Seeley? No, but it is Freddie E. Williams. All right, so it's the same guy who did He-Man in the other book. But this was an interesting story, and I will say, your first cartoon, nice. We're on the same team now. We're on the same team because I still, when I have the time, then I'm still able to watch that or a few episodes of that show. But anyways, let's take a look at this book. So, the Thundercats, Mumra and Skeletor have teamed together against the Thundercats and He-Man. This is also a very interesting story where these young heroes are able to sort of interact and encounter the vulnerabilities. Yes, you are right. You are in fact seeing Prince Adam being buried because he's supposedly dead, and so what's his name? Lionel is kind of having to take that responsibility of having to fight both the guys, and then this is the book in which both of them are in the same universe. I'm gonna have to check if they released a different book with them coming together again. I have a feeling they might have, but if you're interested in reading an epic story of the Thundercats and the He-Man, look at this illustration. Isn't that so cool? You've got Castle Grayskull, Lionel, and He-Man all together. It looks great. So I think pretty much, yep, you got some sketch art in the back as well. This is not unusual with many of these books. They just show you some sketch work, which is kind of nice as well. and you can see how Sorceress and Orko and they're all being illustrated. So this is actually a good book for $17. I would say you go to your comic book store and get one. You can probably get it at a cheaper rate as well, because sometimes when these books start to become old, they just want to sell them off, and you might get a discount on them as well. But there's that. Okay, The Flash War. Okay, so I was never a constant purchaser of the Flash books, but on and off I would get them just to see what's happening, what is it all about, and I forget what the storyline on this one was, to be very honest. But it was, I think, around a couple of Flashes getting together and fighting evil. So this book, actually I've forgotten what the stories were on this one. So that almost makes me want to say that I'm not recommending this book, because it's like, well, is it what happened in it? So I'm forgetting what the story was, but I'm sure it was interesting for what it was. Excuse me. For now, I'm probably gonna suggest don't buy this one for $17, but maybe if I revisit it, I'll do a different review on this one, and you can decide if you want to get the Flash World. The illustrations are nice though, and sometimes they have storylines with the Flash in which he really becomes the center of the DC universe, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, because this was a forgettable story, I guess, for me, then I would not really say much to that. Okay, doesn't he look like Henry Cavill? All right, this was the time, and this was the what is it? The DC Rebirth. This is when they were finishing off the New 52, and they were bringing back the original Superman. So this was my take, or my attempt at getting back into the Superman stories. And they've had some good artists, some of the classical artists in here as well. But the story was just okay. Nothing amazing. I like the art though, so I will give it that much credit. By the way, if you don't know, that this Lois Lane over here, this is the Lois Lane that was voted as the best version of Lois Lane, and so James Gunn, who's directed the new Superman movie, has taken inspiration from this Lois Lane. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a fun fact for you guys out there. Okay, and we continue on. This was action. This is volume 1. What I just showed you was volume 2. Let me just show that back. This was volume 2, and this is volume 1. Guys, sorry, there might be some noise in the back. Looks like the family is just getting a little noisy right now. Anyways, so this is volume 1. This is actually when the original Superman comes back to replace the new 52 version. If you didn't know, well, forget the spoiler stuff, but in the new 52, that Superman actually dies, right? And that paves the way for the old Superman, the classic Superman, to get back into the mainstream of DC stories, in which he has a son. The son grows up to be, a Superman. Never a fan of it, was not interested, but that's what that was. But if you're interested in seeing how the original Superman transitions back into the new 52, what am I saying? The original Superman transitioning back from the new 52 into mainstream DC, then this is the book that you can probably just read and you'll know what happened. Okay, so there is that DC Universe Rebirth Action Comics. Beyond that, I probably would not recommend anything. This one is for $17, so that's okay. $17 is not bad for this book. Alright, so now, because I'm using one hand, I'm going to try to struggle through the Infinity Crisis. Now, you probably have heard a lot about Infinite Crisis and Crisis in Multiverse and so on and so forth. I'll just give you a quick brief about where that comes from. Alright, here we go. So, of course, for all those who know, Crisis on Infinite Earths, this came back was it in the 80s or something when this book came out? Of course, it For you probably already know, this is the book that sort of realigned DC, rebooted it in many ways. What they had was they had the concept of multiverses, and in this book, all those multiverses become just one galaxy or one universe, and all the characters in those universe, they were it. So it was a way for DC to reset the timeline. And at first I couldn't understand what were they really trying to reset. But if you go into the history, the whole idea was, look, we had the golden age Superman. Is he the same Superman as the silver age Superman, right? We had all these multiple characters. What do we do with them? So the concept was like just the multiverse, that they were all from a different universe. They come together because there's this intergalactic danger that's happening. The universes are dying, so they need to come together to save it. It is a very extensive reading experience. There's a lot of storyline, a lot of dialogue, a lot of words that are going into it. You will find that a lot of characters will also be dying in this book. So yeah, all I just want to say is that a lot is happening in this book, but the artwork is really good. The coloring is really good. Overall, the illustrations are very nice. Well, isn't that what I just said? It is epic. It is huge. But it does answer a lot of questions about why the DC is the way it is today. But because this book came out a long time ago and it was very popular for what it was, then the whole idea was, I think DC decided, hey, they needed to capitalize on this crisis on infinite Earths, right? And so what happens is we reach what is known as Infinite Crisis. Okay, Infinite Crisis is where some of those characters, or at least the surviving characters from the Crisis book, they return. Okay, so in this book they return, and then people are basically it's like, oh, I remember what happened way back then. Okay, so this is not as epic as the Crisis on Infinite Earths, but this is pretty darn big for what it is. There is still a lot of grandeur in it. It was interesting to see the Golden Age Superman show up like that. This looks like a job for Superman, right? And some of the characters, they start to remember the old stuff that happened to them. And then the whole, was this the one in which suddenly it was decided that no, we do need a multiverse. But the crux of it is these survivors from the Crisis on Infinite Earths from those other universes, they sort of come back into the fold saying, hey, we deserve a universe, or we deserve our own lives. Why should we be set aside as nobodies? It's an interesting take, I will say that much. And then, of course, the villain is, not surprisingly, a Luthor is the villain in this book as well. Things get super grand. And so more deaths occur, and finally things happen, and then things another motivation for the old Superman was because his Lois was getting older and older and she was dying, so he was losing the one thing that sort of anchored him to this world. He didn't want her to die, so that was motivating him to sort of go out and do things that he would have normally not done. So this is the scene in which his Lois actually dies, right? Ultimately, even this Superman dies. Where is it? There's a scene somewhere near the end where, and Superboy Prime returns as well. This was the Superboy of that world. So he comes back as well. So it is interesting. I will say this much, that this storyline is interesting. So this is something you can consider buying. You should have a good time. Oh, there it is right there. Here is where you see the Superman of that line finally dying. So trying to just close off that some of the open-endedness of some of those other characters. But the Superboy Prime, he still lives, and he becomes the villain. So a lot of interesting things happening over there. These are some very nice illustrations of the various Wonder Woman. So that's the older Wonder Woman over there meeting the current Wonder Woman. By the way, I did enjoy Wonder Woman with those excessively curly hair. I thought that looked really nice. They should probably stick with that. The long hair looks nice as well, but I kind of like that heavy curly hair. That looked really nice. And this is how this book ends. So some very interesting things over there. And it's a pretty large collection. So, but you know, what was the price on this one? Let me just tell you what the price was on this one. $18. $18 for this book is not a bad idea, not a bad one. This is let me see. This is going to be pretty. This is $30 for this book. Now, you know, $30 is a fair amount, but you know, if you really want to just understand what happened way back then, this is the book that will inform you. So those are my suggestions. If you've got suggestions that I should be looking at, please let me know. I might already have some of the books that you might recommend, but I'm still interested in learning what those recommendations are, because I do read them and I do keep revisiting these books. They're fun, they're enjoyable. We should, you know, I'm open to some of them. I don't go too drastically alternative, because sometimes I'm like, what is this? What is happening? But some of these books are worth the read. So that's why they are part of the collection. This allows me to read them again, because if you're just going to buy these books and they're just going to stay in your closet and you're never going to read them again, so small, almost like, well, what was the point of buying so many books, right? So that's why I would recommend my recommendations. At least this is what they are. I think that is pretty much it from this lot. I do have a lot more that I'll pull out in another video, but this is certainly one of the good reads that I've got. Let me just sort this like this, and we should be okay. All right, guys, looks like I've got everything in order, so I think it's a good time to wrap up. Let me know if you have any recommendations. I can certainly take a look, because I do visit my comic store at least once a month. And oh, by the way, yes, that is a Flintstones cushion that I purchased when I was visiting the Gulf, the Middle East. They actually had a store dedicated to these franchises. I was very impressed, so that's why I do have that cushion with me. It's a favorite. Well, that is all for today, guys. Thank you so much for those who joined in. Love your comments. Keep up. We'll see you all next time. Have a great one, guys. I'm going to log off now.